raising oysters is we start with conditioning our brood stock, which is we bring our adult oysters that we have hanging over the side, we've been living all winter out in the ocean, inside, and we warm them up, and we want to get them up to 20, 23 degrees Celsius, and we give them lots of algae. We want to fatten them up for about 7 weeks so that they think that it's springtime and it's time to spawn. And then when we get them conditioned enough to where they're spawning, we strip spawn them. So we'll shuck a couple and we'll see if they're male or female. And we'll put the eggs in one container and the sperm in another container. And when we get the right quantities, we'll mix them together. And then we transfer that to a larval tank, because when they first hatch out, they're just free floating in a water column. So we have about a 1,000-gallon tank that feeds them algae and has good oxygen to it and is warm, so that those guys can float around, I think 21 to 30 days, depending on the temperature. They will want to set and become oysters. Because when they're floating around as little microscopic critters, it's just a bucket of water that you're trying to deal with, and you screen it off every couple days to see how much they're growing and look at them under the microscope, and then put them back into a new tank. So we do that every other day. We screen them off and check them for about 30 days. And once they decide that they want to set, we'll put them in the screens in the Weller tanks with a little bit of sand, which is just ground oyster shell, to stimulate them to set on that sand. So they'll find that each oyster will find a little grain of sand to set on, and they'll use that to start building their shells. And we'll leave them in the Weller tank in the downwelling position, so the water's flowing down over top of the oysters and coming out the bottom of the screen with all the algae and available oxygen we can give them until they've set and they're all on the bottom of the screen. And then we'll switch it to upwelling, which the water flows up through the bottom of the screen and out a hole at the top, so that it's constantly flowing over the oysters with lots of food and oxygen. We clean the screens every day, take them and just rinse them all off to make sure that they can still pass through enough food and water. And then we'll do that for 10 to 14 days the first time, and then we'll get a bigger screen. We'll go from the 200 UM to like a 400, 450 screen, and then we'll screen them off and separate them. The small guys go on the smaller screen, the bigger guys go on a bigger screen, and that allows all the oysters to get more food depending on their size, so they're not crowding each other out, and the big guys aren't hogging all the food from the little guys. So we separate them every week. We do that, and once they get to be about 1,600 UM, we'll transfer them into the bottle system, which allows them to dance around a little bit more. They get even more food dancing around them, and so that the littler guys in the bottles have more of a chance to get food and aren't as crowded out as they would be in the screens. And then they go in the bottle system for a month, maybe 2 months, depending on how fast they're growing. And we screen them off weekly to see how much they're growing, their sizes. And once they get up to about 3 millimeters, they're big enough to go into the Flupsy, which is a floating upweller system that they have out at the farm. It's got a big paddle wheel on it. It pushes water through them, and they'll go into containers in that and grow up until I think they do them until they're about a ½ an inch, and then they go out to the farm in the actual cages where they'll be raised. So yeah, that's the basic process of raising oysters in the hatchery.